well, I do know what people expected. They expected a horror anime, and they got a comedy.
An idol show, even.
Yeah, well, okay, yeah, with
We've been
comedy in it.
tricked. We've been duped, Alex.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Anime Club After Dark, the podcast that delves into all things anime, manga, and otaku culture related. I'm your host, Alex, but you can call me Senpai, and joining me tonight, I have our poser extraordinaire, Nitai.
Hello, 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 hello. I got nothing creative for the intro tonight. It's just me. Again.
You don't have to worry, though, because you don't have to compete with show.
That's very true. I mean...
Because no one can.
Yeah. Yep. There's no bar to try and go beyond. It's just me under a
no further
blanket.
beyond with him.
Exactly. It's me, Porco Blanket, engaged, talking about shitty studios. It's great.
Do you want to tell everyone why? Do you want to tell everyone why you're under a blanket tonight to record?
I'm just not under. Oh my god, nice. I'm back at my parents' place for this recording, so no isolation box this time. Just me and a blanket in a dark room.
Just the perils of being the tie.
Yeah, life's great, Sometimes you find yourself just thinking about the situation you're in and thinking to yourselves, where have this all gone wrong?
Well, let's find out where it all went wrong, because tonight you and I are going to be talking about Studio MAPPA. This is the third of our studio retrospectives. It's been a while since we did our last one, which was on Studio Trigger. I feel like we should do more of these going forward, because I actually enjoy talking about different studios and the works that they do and how they operate.
Yeah.
And a little bit of their history. So after watching this or listening to this, if you have any ideas for studios you would like to hear us talk about their history and their works that they've done, do let us know. I know that Natai, you and I have talked about doing Gainax at some point.
That'll be an interesting one to talk about for sure.
Or we'll just talk about Evangelion for like 50 minutes.
Oh, hey, look, it's the Evangelion spoilercast we've been wanting to do for a
long
time.
I know, right?
Oh, shit. Whoops.
I know someone else has wanted us to do Madhouse, which there's definitely a Madhouse link into MAPPA, which is what we're going to be talking about. Yeah, there's a couple other studios I think we've talked about doing. But yeah, if you enjoy these, let us know, and do let us know if there are any other studios you would like for us to talk about going forward. That being said, let's actually talk a little bit about the history of Studio MAPPA.
Mm-hmm.
So Studio MAPPA as a studio was founded on June 14th of 2011. So that means they just celebrated their 10th anniversary just very, very recently.
Congratulations, for sure.
Congratulations. You're not legal yet, MAPPA. Give it a little more time. Give it 8 more years. Well, I guess 7 more years in Japan. But it was founded back in 2011 by Masao Maruyama, who was the founder and former producer at Madhouse, Studio Madhouse.
No, this guy is a legend, honestly, because he worked with he works. I mean, his what you say, catalog goes all the way back to Astro Boy, where he was also working on that as an animator. Like the guy is a legend in the industry, honestly.
Yeah. In fact, it's funny because we're actually recording this on June 18th. His birthday is June 19th.
Oh, shit.
1941. So that means he will be 80 years old by the time this episode goes out.
Yeah, it's funny. He also worked a lot with Miyazaki, which, just like him, is still alive and kicking. Which is, it's an interesting generation for sure when it comes to animators.
Yeah, it's funny because he has got, besides working in the anime industry for as long as he has been the founder and or co-founder of 3 different anime studios now. Madhouse, MAPPA, and now Studio M2, which is a relatively new studio that's only worked on a couple of different projects as of the time of this recording, which we might talk about a little bit here. But I mean, So I didn't know this. I knew that MAPPA was an acronym. I never knew what it was an acronym for until I was researching this. Apparently, MAPPA stands for Maruyama Animation Produce Project Association.
Yep.
Dude put his name on it and then left it.
Which I assume is what like M2 maybe stands for. Maybe Maruyama 2, maybe?
I don't know
That's a
what
possibility.
M2 stands for. But yeah, so he actually Maruyama himself did leave the studio in 2016 to found Studio M2, as we said. The new president and CEO of the company is Manabu Otsuka, who was the producer of Yuri on Ice, which is one of their first really big, huge hits that MAPPA did. But
we'll get to Yuri on Ice for sure.
Yeah, we'll definitely get to that.
Very much a turning point for the studio.
Yes, for sure. So the thing about MAPPA is when it was founded, Maruyama basically came out and said that he wanted it to be a place where creativity could flourish and different creators, whether that be, producers or head animators or writers or whatever, could realize their visions.
Yeah. It's very much just like how we found in Madhouse as a place for him and his buddies to create cool shit. When Madhouse started to change and was bought by, I don't remember which company it was, but it was bought out, and he saw like the working environment change, now like the philosophy behind how they approach different project change. He was like, I just want to go back to create cool shit with people I like working with. So that's why he broke off and created MAPPA, honestly.
And you can definitely say that they were living up to that standard, especially in their first few years, because if you look at some of the anime that they worked on back then, I mean, you got stuff like they came right out of the gate with Kids on the Slope, which I don't know if you've seen it, Natai.
Not yet, but I really want to. It's from Shinichiro Watanabe from Cowboy Bebop fame. It's one I really want to check out.
Yeah, it's really great. It reunites Watanabe with Yoko Kanno for the music. Great jazz and swing inspired soundtrack in that anime. I highly recommend Kids on the Slope if you haven't seen it. But that was their first proper anime production. Granted, it was a co-production with Tezuka Productions. But still, they came out of the box swinging on that one. Now, I can't say that Kids on the Slope was a huge financial success, but it was certainly a critical success at the time, and still is. And again, Shinichiro Watanabe is a fucking legend at this point, I think. So, I mean, what a great way to start off, like with your first production, right? To get to get with someone like Watanabe for your first production. For sure. Like I say, if you haven't seen it, go watch Kids on the Slope. It's really good, especially if you like this slower paced slice of life anime.
And in general, like anything Watanabe touches is something that's like it's worth giving a shot. I mean, maybe one day we'll do an episode dedicated to the guy, but because he by himself created so many memorable shows.
Oh, for sure. He'd definitely be someone worth talking about their works. But then again, in the if you look at like their first, I don't know, dozen or so anime productions that they worked on, something you'll see in there peppered throughout is the term original work. They, at the very beginning of their tenure, and still a little bit to this day, have never really shied away from anime original works. And that's something I think in the beginning that really separated them, that they weren't afraid to take these risks. Because if you think about it, taking on an anime original work as an anime studio, huge risk, because it doesn't have an established fan base. Because if you're working with something from a manga or a light novel, it's going to have some kind of established fan base that are probably going to watch your anime regardless.
It's a much harder sell for sure.
But yeah, original works are significantly harder sells. They're harder to get funding for. It's harder all around because you don't have all this built-in hype for it.
It's also worth mentioning that it seemed like in their first few years, they were, I don't know if to say, were sort of more picky with their projects. Like they made some, but they weren't a whole lot. They just, it felt like they made the projects they believed in and wanted to make. Whether it turned good or bad, that was not the point. The point was they believed in something and just went for it with, like, they just poured their hearts into it, you know?
Yeah. Well, in that sense, especially the early years, really reminds me of how Kyoto Animation operates, where they're very picky and choosy with what they take on. I think it's because, well, there's several reasons that KyoAni is like that. Mostly because they've been around for a long time and they've garnered a lot of trust within the industry. But it's something that when MAPPA first came around, it really reminded me of how Kyoto Animation operates in that regard, where they didn't just take anything that was thrown at them. It's like, no, we're going to say no to this, maybe to that, definitely yes to this. And it was great to see in the beginning because there was not... unlike how they are today, where it seems like there's a 2 or 3 MAPPA anime coming out every season, you were lucky if you got 2 or 3 MAPPA anime a year.
Yeah, we'll get to MAPPA nowadays, but it definitely seemed in the last few years, they've been just taking any project they were asked to. Doesn't matter what project it is. Yeah, we'll do it. We'll get it done, and it leads to some really packed years with a lot of work they've been doing. And we talked about many times about in this show about how the animators are treated in the anime industry, but it's kind of crazy how much work they're putting into shows, and multiple shows every season. It's insane. And MAPPA is one of the biggest studios that are doing it, just taking on so many projects. So, but we'll get to that.
Probably too many projects, but like you said, we'll get to that. One work I definitely want to highlight from the early years also is another Watanabe work, is Terror in Resonance.
Another original.
An anime original work by Watanabe. I think one thing that this anime is known for, sadly, is the English in it. It's I don't know, for anytime I talk about it with someone, it seems to be the first thing they always speak to about it. I'm like, yeah, it's funny, but there's so much more to this anime, and I really love Terror in Resonance, crappy English notwithstanding.
Also a Yoko Kanno OST, a really good one.
Yes. Yeah. Those two love to work together.
They bring the best in each other, honestly.
Yeah. But yeah, another anime original work that, again, it's one of those things where it was the risk-reward thing, where this was an original work. No one really knew anything about it going in except Watanabe was doing it and Yoko Kanno was doing the music. And it kind of worked out because I think it was somewhat of a critical success at the time. And it was...
But again, not a huge financial hit, right?
No. And then, after that you have Garo, which they've done several seasons of that at this point, which has worked out pretty well for them, I think. I have never seen that. I've never seen any of the seasons of Garo, but people who have tell me it's actually pretty good. So it's something I probably need to get into at some point.
Garo is interesting specifically because how it was given. Who was the director that we listed for Garo?
The first season was
Yuichiro Hayashi.
Hayashi.
Now this one specifically, from what I looked up and what I read, it seemed it was given to him as sort of like a testing ground for CG animation, which it utilizes a lot. And you can see how specifically for Yuichiro Hayashi, who later would direct quite a lot of MAPPA's works, he would really specialize a lot in shows that would use more CG interaction scenes, And so It's interesting. While again, maybe that one is not it's not an original. Obviously, it's based on source material, but they still went ahead and gave it a sort of it was a project for them to test out the CG animation, because they knew it's a new tool that they need to learn and utilize, because it'll be useful for them, obviously, to enhance some shows if they do it well. So again, they didn't take on it just because they were asked to. They took the project as a testing ground to check to learn CG as an animation form.
Yeah, for sure. And actually, if you look at the works done by Studio MAPPA, that's a name you'll see come up a lot. Yuichiro Hayashi.
Yeah.
Even up to today, he was one of the 2 co-directors, I guess you could say, of Attack on Titan's final season.
Which, again, utilized a lot of CG, and by that point, he's been working in MAPPA for almost 10 years. So, that team knows how to work with that format of animation.
Yeah, he's probably the closest thing MAPPA has to an in-house director at this point.
Mm-hmm.
He's definitely the one they tend to use more often than not.
Him and
that
recently...
and Jun Shishido.
Also recently, Sungo Park for specifically God of High School and Jujutsu Kaisen has been like really bringing out these like really big hits. But he specializes, like, it seems his work focused more on like that super like heavily positively heavily choreographed fight scenes, specifically with 2D animation that look amazing, by the way. But yeah, he's also like been popping up a lot lately in their portfolio.
But speaking of original work, something else that they worked on was Punchline, which is another really good anime you should watch if you haven't yet.
So you've watched it?
I have. It's obviously been a while because I watched it while it was airing, but
I know it's weird, but I was curious about that.
It's a super weird anime, but I highly recommend it. It's just weird. I don't know any other way to describe it besides weird.
I want to give a real special shout out to I linked the video in the doc, and I think I sent it to you when it came out maybe a month or two ago. But there's a YouTube channel called Canopy Effect, which they talk a lot about animation and animation studios. And a lot of this discussion we're having is also like in relation to that video, because he discusses a lot of the history of Studio MAPPA, and one of the interesting things he talks about is how in the early years Maruyama pretty much was like, as the head honcho of the studio, people would come to him and say, hey, I got this project I want to do, and pretty much if he greenlit it, then you could do whatever the fuck you want. And very interestingly, even though he's from the older generation, he greenlit Punchline, even though it is such a weird show and probably not something that maybe is like to his taste, but he believed in it, and the guys who pitched like making the show, and he greenlit it because he believed in his staff, So again, really really different culture from nowadays in MAPPA.
Oh, for sure. And it highlights that what the studio was allegedly founded on, like letting the imagination of creators run free. Like, if you can come to Maruyama with an idea and you can sell it to him, no matter how ridiculous that idea might be, as in the case of something like Punchline, he'll probably greenlight it if he thinks, number one, the idea is good and he believes in your talent as an artist.
Yeah.
Which says a lot. I mean, I really wish that more anime studios are run that way, because I feel like if they were, number one, we wouldn't be getting a deluge of anime every single season, but we'd also be getting a higher quality product more times than not.
Yep, definitely.
I think so, at least. So moving on from that, I mean, they had a couple of other works that they did in the meantime, but probably their biggest hit, or their first really huge hit, was 2016's Yuri on Ice. That again was an original work, and that's one of those things, like it's another risk reward thing. They took a huge risk on Yuri on Ice, right? Granted, they got Sayo Yamamoto on board, who she is, as far as I can tell, pretty damn good at what she does. Like, she doesn't work on a ton of stuff, but when her name gets attached to it, you can be assured that it's going to be quality.
Oh, this was like a passion project for her.
For sure.
She like went for different studios and no one wanted to take it, but then like she approached MAPPA and they believed in it and gave her the platform to realize her vision for it.
For sure.
And it was I can't stress it enough. When the show aired, it was huge. Like, you couldn't escape it anywhere. Like, everyone were talking about it. Everyone were gushing about it, or even hated it. But everyone were talking about Yuri on Ice when it came out. Yeah,
and like the whole thing of it coming, Yuri on Ice coming about, is it's sort of a co-production with Mitsuru Kubo, who wrote the story. And she came to Sayo Yamamoto with the idea, and then Sayo Yamamoto came up with character designs for all these characters. And then they, from what I can understand, went to MAPPA with it, and then they're like, yeah, this sounds pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
and then they got to work on it together. Huge risk, because think about this: it's an original work. You're marketing it as a sports anime, but it's a sports anime about figure skating. Like, I can't imagine, even though the people who like figure skating are very passionate about it, I can't imagine that it would have broad mass market appeal just from that word alone, figure skating.
I mean, the yaoi fan base, though, it's
yes,
very strong.
I get it, but I'm just saying, if you're marketing it on those two things, sports anime, figure skating, like, that's a tough sell.
Oh, for sure. But
it's a huge risk, and you can look at, if you watch the show today, you can tell that a lot of work went into this, and I have to imagine a lot of money was poured into this too, because of how good the animation is. Now, granted, it's not great throughout the whole thing. There are times when it's not so great. But
also, it was kind of a mess, just the scheduling of that show. Like, I remember when, like, it aired, and after that, like, after it finished airing, there were news coming out about how it was pretty much every episode was almost done at the last second of, like, it been aired. You know, it was super hectic and super stressful, and really pushed the team to their limit, honestly.
I don't remember exactly the time frame, but I remember reading an article that came out shortly after the anime itself finished airing, that said that final episode was sent, like, to the station that was, like, the finished episode was sent to the station that aired it, like, 3 days before it aired.
Yeah, which is not ideal.
Is crazy to think about.
It's not ideal. Like, keeping that schedule for 12 weeks or so is not great. I can't even imagine the stress the animator had to go through while working on it. But again, it was a huge hit, so it sort of maybe seemed to them, to, like, the studio, as, like, being worth it. You know, it's okay getting your entire staff so stressed out and work to the bone, you know, because it was a moneymaker for them.
Oh yeah, for sure. And like you said, this shit was everywhere while it was airing. In fall 2016. Like, I'm looking right now at some of the other stuff that was airing fall 2016, and about the only other thing I can think of that has had at least any kind of impact to me from that season is March Comes In Like a Lion.
And that was a very low-key sort of impact on the community.
Yeah. And there were other anime that, you know, you look back on them now. I'm looking at the season chart for it right now. There were other anime that came out at the same time that you're thinking, wow, this is some pretty good anime. No one was talking about it back then. Yeah. I guarantee you no one was talking about it.
Like, even the biggest, like, even Mob Psycho, which was huge in 2016, even that was, like, when Yuri on Ice came out, it quickly, like, I don't know if overshadowed, but it just couldn't escape, like, you couldn't escape Yuri on Ice. It was everywhere. Mm-hmm. For, like, again, not even talking about the quality of the show, it just in terms of popularity, everyone was watching, everybody were talking about it. Even if you weren't watching it, you heard about it constantly.
Yes, for sure. And, you know, you mentioned the crunch that was, you know, enacted to make this thing happen. I think that's the point where MAPPA started to go downhill. Not with that project in particular, because obviously it worked out for them, right? It was it was a huge critical success. It was a huge financial success for them. I feel like if Yuri on Ice had failed at you know, being the work that it was, I think MAPPA would be a totally different studio today. Because the thing about it is they started implementing that crunch for Yuri on Ice, and of course this was back before, I guess, people were humble enough, or studios were humble enough to say, hey, we got to delay this airing. Because they do that constantly now.
Because they just can't keep up with all the production they're like just taking on. They can't do it.
But I feel like if this hadn't worked out, they might not have done that, because this worked out, they got it into their heads for some reason that this was a viable solution for working going forward. Now, granted, it didn't happen immediately, but you can see it over the next couple of years after Yuri on Ice aired, that starting to creep into more and more and more of their productions, where they were taking on a lot more stuff than they had been previously.
Also,
and they were the deadlines for them getting done were getting closer and closer to the air dates.
Also, very important to note is 2016 is the same year, and I can't remember. I haven't checked the date specifically, but I think it was after Yuri on Ice. The Maruyama left the company and he left to create M2, but he pretty much quit MAPPA.
Yeah, it was in 2016. I don't know what the actual date in 2016 was that he left. Well, I don't have an actual date, but it does say April 2016, so it was before Yuri on Ice even aired.
But Yuri on Ice might have been like already in production while it was happening.
Oh, I have no doubt that it was in production. I know it had been announced by then because I remember Yuri on Ice being announced in the winter season of 2016.
Yeah, and important to note that the producer of Yuri on Ice, Manabu Otsuka, we mentioned before, took on as the new president of the company once Maruyama left. And a lot of changes were happening in 2016 for them, for sure.
Yeah, especially going into 2017. So with 2017, they come in with another anime that I like, another Hayashi directed anime. That's Kakegurui, which I fucking loved. I love everything about Kakegurui. It's weird. It's crazy. It's about gambling. It's literally the main character is someone who gets sexually turned on by gambling. What's not to like?
It's definitely a show that exists, and I have nothing to comment.
You should definitely watch it.
Yeah.
If we're not like Kakegurui is worth watching simply for all the crazy reaction faces.
For sure. There's the famous pose of her just like with her hands to her like cheeks or whatever, smiling like a crazy bitch. Like it's like, okay, that's a very strong image, I suppose.
Imagine that at least once every episode. That's Kakegurui.
Shoutouts to that OP, because that OP is fucking amazing. I haven't watched the show, but that opening is incredible sequence. I absolutely adore it.
It is. I don't know if MAPPA actually did the OP.
I think it's even directed by Sayo Yamamoto, if I'm not mistaken. I think so. I might be wrong with that. For some reason, I remember reading that, but I'll have to double check.
I wouldn't necessarily be surprised.
Quite a lot of Yuri, yeah.
yeah, right.
But yeah, 2017.
I'll show you, Yuri.
2017 was really like you could see how like the first few years they would release some shows, but then 2017, bam, they would release this like almost every season they would release a show in 2017.
Oh yeah, for sure.
You had Kakegurui in the summer. You also had Shingeki no Bahamut, the second season of that, in the spring.
Yeah.
Altair in the summer as well, and Inuyashiki in the fall of 2017.
Yeah, Inuyashiki is another good one.
That's another one based on a very popular manga, right?
It is. I don't know how popular manga is. I'd have to go
popular, but
it
was like very. It's very, very critical. Like it.
It's a critically acclaimed manga.
Yes.
For sure it is. And it's got that it's got this theme that I've liked a lot about the aging hero. I don't know, for some reason I really like stories about like the aging hero who's trying to like recapture recapture
their youth?
Not youth. I know that's the phrase, but recapture the essence that made them a hero. Like they've gotten older, they can't do the things that they used to do, and they don't feel like a hero anymore, even though they may be regarded as one. If there's a word for that, please let me know. But yeah, like that's another one. Great fight sequences in that anime too.
But yeah, 2017 was really stacked for MAPPA.
Yeah, that was when they really started to pop off as an anime studio, and I think a lot of that was fueled. I mean, obviously, some of these things that came out in 2017 were already in development before Yuri on Ice even aired, but I feel like the success of Yuri on Ice really drove them to like they feel like they can do that with everything they put out, and I'm like, no, you're not everything you put out is going to be a Yuri on Ice. It's not going to be an anime that's going to be everywhere all the time.
Yeah.
And what's so funny to me is, like, as stacked as their 2017 was, then they go into 2018. They only released 2 anime that year.
Yeah, I think they released I think, like, by the way, we're like we got this dog going on here with a list of all these shows. Like I definitely trimmed some of the shows they've been working on because like at least according to Mal, they also list a whole lot of OVAs and stuff like that. But it's like it's not as like a big productions, you know. But the most notable of 2018 were definitely Banana Fish and what was the other one?
Zombieland Saga.
Zombieland Saga.
How could you forget Zombieland Saga?
Yeah, I know, right? So 2018 was a good year, but that's the interesting thing, like, because we talk about how they took on a lot of shows, but they still managed to keep that sort of like it's not like JC staff where they take on a shit ton of shows, but you see how much the quality is like kind of like taking its toll on them, because again 2018 you got both Banana Fish and Zombieland Saga, both. I mean, I haven't seen Banana Fish. You've seen it, right?
Oh, I have. I absolutely love it. I also love the manga that it's based on.
And that one was a really quality show. And Zombieland Saga, for all of its flaws, it's a very unique, original, very much fueled by its creative vision. Even though it is kind of like... I can't remember that when I read that, but I read an interview with the director was like, yeah, Zombieland Saga was a lot of fun to work on, but we were kind of winging it at some point because it was so hectic just scheduling that show.
Let's be honest, it plays into the anime itself, because the anime is hectic as hell.
Yeah, I know, right?
But yeah, that was another like a surprise. I don't want to say surprise hit, but it kind of was. I don't know what people. Well, I do know what people expected. They expected a horror anime, and they got a comedy.
An idol show, even.
Yeah. Well, okay. Yeah.
We've been tricked. We've been duped, Alex.
I don't think I've ever been happier to be duped like that, though.
Oh, for sure. I agree.
It's funny. We've talked about that before, how like they pulled the wool over everybody's eyes with the marketing for Zombieland Saga.
Yeah.
Because if you go back and look, like all the marketing leading up to the premiere of Zombieland Saga was they made it look like it was going to be a horror anime, like it had tags on it, horror, psychological, all kinds of crap like that. But then like the second it aired, everything changed. Like it's this happy-go-lucky idol based comedy, and it works. It fucking
they played
works
us like a damn fiddle.
Because
and that was also a big hit, right?
Zombieland Saga was a huge hit. In fact, as we're recording this, the second season is airing.
Yeah.
And it's really good, from what you say. I haven't watched it yet. But what was I gonna? Oh, so like leading up to it, I didn't know what to expect either. I was halfway expecting this to be like an anime adaptation of the live action film Zombieland.
Yeah, I know, right? It seemed like they might be connected. I even remember the first poster there was this of the house, and it's all like just really gritty and scary, and it's like, oh, I wonder what this show is about. But then the moment like the first episode hits, like, oh, new poster, it's just zombie idols. Okay.
Yeah.
It's like, yep, pretty much the show.
That must be one of the best marketed anime ever, though. Like, or at least one of the most creatively marketed anime I've ever seen. I mean, especially with those live action commercials that or previews that Mamoru Miyano did.
I don't know if it tops the marketing for Madoka Magica, but it's still pretty damn good.
Oh well, the marketing for Madoka Magica is legendary at this point.
For sure. Come watch our just a wonderful show about magical girls. Definitely nothing's gonna happen. Oh look, it's Garen Ubuchi. I'm sure it's just a cheerful, wonderful show.
Death and destruction.
Pretty much.
Oh man.
Moving on to.
I was gonna say, just with finishing up with Zombieland Saga, I have never been more thrilled in my life to be lied to about marketing.
Same. I'm definitely there with you.
2019 though was an interesting year. This again is another year where MAPPA took on probably a little more than they could chew, although they definitely made it work. One anime, I mean, the second season of Kakegurui also came out in 2019, which again was really good. But there were two that stick out in my mind in particular, and I don't know if you've seen either one of them, but I highly recommend both. Both are also co-productions. The first one, Dororo, is a co-production with Tezuka Productions, which is the studio they did a co-production with for their very first anime, Kids on the Slope.
I think because both shows are based on Tezuka manga, right?
Kids on the Slope is not.
Oh, okay.
Kids on the Slope is based on a manga written by Yuki Kodama.
Oh, okay.
But Dororo is based on a manga written by Osamu Tezuka. It's also based on the original anime adaptation of that manga from the
very old manga
60s.
Yeah.
So old that it was in black and white. It is. It's also super dark. It is a super dark story, which is kind of crazy when you think about the era in which it was written.
Yeah.
But again, it's really good. It's something that really flew under the radar while it was airing, at least in the United States. And I think that's partially due to the fact that when it was airing, it was on Amazon Prime.
That's right. Now because I was thinking about to myself, people were talking about this show, but it wasn't big. I was like, why wasn't it big at least in the Western anime community? But now you just reminded me of fucking Amazon Prime prison.
Yeah, this is really back. I think this is right before they gave up
Amazon
on that
strike.
whole thing. Yeah, it was Amazon strike.
Oh, excuse me.
Or anime strike or whatever the hell they were calling it back then. I think that the season after this is when they stopped doing anime strike.
Yeah,
and just like if you have Prime Video, you can have all this stuff. I'm like, well, that's all we fucking wanted in the first place. But yeah, Dororo, super dark. I hesitate to call it a shonen because of how dark it is.
Yeah.
But it's another one of those things that I really highly recommend it if you haven't seen it. In terms of an anime remake, which is essentially what Dororo is, it's one of the better ones out there, in my opinion.
It's very important to, like, as we've been talking, because 2018 and 2019 were also kind of stacked for MAPPA, but it's very important to remind everyone that we talk about how stacked those years were for them, but they still put out quality shows. Maybe not the some visionary masterpieces or something that's very much the creation of a specific auteur or something like that, but still good shows, solid shows, even great shows.
Yeah, and it's worth mentioning that obviously we're not going super in depth with everything that they've ever made, but the stuff that they have made was all mostly quality. I mean, yeah, they had a couple of duds here and there, but at least they all looked good, and they,
But it also all happened despite the fact that they were taking on a lot of shows at the same time and overworking their staff. That's the kind of a miracle thing that we don't know how long it's gonna last for them, but it's definitely a thing to keep in mind.
And something else that came out in 2019 that they worked on that both myself and Sho did an episode by episode review of it, which you can definitely find on our channel if you go want to look at it. Is an anime called Sara Zenmai.
Sara Zenmai, though, specifically it was produced by them, but they weren't that involved in actually creating it. Apparently, that was more on. What was the name of the other studio?
The other studio's name is Lapin Track.
Yeah,
Track. I'm not sure how you're supposed to say it.
As far as I could tell from reading up on it and checking some videos, it seemed like they did most of the heavy work on Sara Zenmai.
Yeah, and that may very well be.
Not to detract from the quality of the show or MAPPA's involvement, but it is very important to
It is listed as a co-production. I can't really say one way or the other exactly how much was produced by each side, but they are listed as a co-producer. So
okay,
in some way or another, it's definitely partially their work.
Yeah.
But Sara Zenmai is it's an anime original work that was done by Kunihiko Ikuhara, who is an animator who you might know from an anime known as Mawaru Penguindrum, or however the fuck you're supposed to say it.
I remember that movie. Yeah.
Yeah, which is that crazy anime. Yeah.
Very strange
He's
film.
he's known for his very strange storytelling techniques, and they're on full display in Sarah Zenmai. It's very much a I can't say in terms of like animation that I thought I was watching something that was Monogatari-esque, but I definitely think in terms of the storytelling, I could see something like Sarah Zenmai coming from the mind of someone like Nisio Isin.
I remember
Like
you
that
guys
kind of weird.
gushing over that show when it first aired.
Oh, I love Sarah Zenmai. I still love Sarah Zenmai. I think it's definitely worth watching. Although, like, if you're going in expecting something that's going to be really straightforward in its storytelling, it's not. It relies on you. The storytelling itself relies on you as an audience member being smart enough to put some pieces together without being explicitly told them, which is something I love. It's one of the reasons I love the Monogatari series, because it doesn't assume that you're stupid.
Yeah.
And need to be told everything. Another reason why I love Sarah Zenmai, but I can't say that it's a wholly serious story either.
Also, I wrote down in the doc. I noted them producing the second season of Grand Blue Fantasy, because that's something that we'll talk about soon. But it sort of showed how they were willing to pick up shows that weren't originally produced. At least the first seasons weren't produced by them. But it came back to, well, we need to create as many shows as possible, because at this point in MAPPA's life, I suppose, they sort of again started pumping even more shows, and were under the philosophy of, well, we need to expand the anime industry even more by increasing the number of productions we'll take on, which will bring in more money, supposedly. So you see that in how they're willing to take on sequels that maybe the original studios weren't able or willing to create at the time, which we'll come back to later.
It's hardly a unique story within the anime industry. That happens a lot. With studios or with different studios taking on different seasons of an anime. I mean, it happens from time to time.
We even did a whole episode on that. Yeah,
we did an entire episode about it, and you should definitely watch it. But it happens for many, many reasons. Either the studio went bankrupt or isn't around anymore, or they're not willing to do it. They didn't think that the first season was profitable enough for them to do it, but they have a production committee that still wants to make it work.
Yep.
I mean, there's many, many reasons. And like you say, with Grand Blue Fantasy season 2, like they were essentially tapped on the shoulder to do it by the production committee, and they're like, yeah, sure, throw it in the pile.
And again, what you said is, I totally agree with it. It's not something unique to MAPPA. They're very much an interesting case in that it's like they're like a reflection of the industry. It's like everything we've been talking about is very much a reflection of the entire industry, and not in a good way. It's kind of a shitty situation, but they still deserve credit for creating quality shows, even though, again, even though it's a reflection of the entire industry, how much they're overworking their staffs and taking on more and even more projects. Even though, like it's been said many times, there are more animators in the industry, and it's a problem.
Yeah, that is a big problem, and I think that studios like MAPPA, at least over the last couple of years, are the type of studios that are fueling this problem.
Very much so, yeah. In 2020, though, again, a lot of shows they've picked up and produced.
Yeah, I'm gonna list them off. We're not gonna talk about all these, obviously, but I just want to list off all the anime that they made in 2020. Now, granted, I won't say they made in 2020, that were released in 2020. But you have Uchitama, Dorohedoro, Listeners, The God of High School, Mr. Love, Jujutsu Kaisen, although that bled into 2021. The Gymnastic Samurai, and the final season of Attack on Titan, which again also bled into 2021. I think obviously the two big takeaways there are probably, Dorohedoro was pretty popular.
Dorohedoro is also really just fucking great. I adore that show. If you should definitely check it out. It's weird. It's really weird. Also,
someone
really
told
good
me it's
CG.
very JoJo's-esque.
It's very bizarre for sure. I love it for it has a really unique world, and it just throws you in there, and it's like, well, you'll pick up on what's gonna happen like as the story goes on, and it's a really, really fun show. It's, again, really great CG fights, done really well, and really fun cast of characters. I would definitely recommend checking out the show. It's great. It's awesome. It's weird. I love it.
But like you talked about, the MAPPA taking on new seasons of works that were started by other studios. I mean, probably the biggest thing going right now, at least, is Attack on Titan, and that caused a huge controversy when that was announced. Because think about this though, Studio Wit was formed almost exclusively to do Attack on Titan, and then they gave it up, and MAPPA took it over. So there were always going to be people that were sitting in the wings waiting to compare frame by frame the two studios and how they tackle.
Which is just shitty, because I'm sure like the animators who worked on it were really like, think about it. You're creating a follow up of one of the biggest shows of all time, and it's a beloved show, and you have all of this pressure and anxiety over it, like living up to that reputation. It's like I can't imagine the stress the animators were under when they created it.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that, because we actually have the words of an animator that worked on it. So back in middle of May, May 14th, the series of tweets come from May 14th from a freelance animator known as Mushio. I before I go any further with this, though, I do feel I should say that as of the time of this recording, the Twitter account in question is no longer active. It's not around as far as I can tell. I don't know whether it was the page itself was deleted or it's just hidden. But this freelance animator who had been hired by MAPPA for at least a little while, according to him, her, it just says they, so I don't know who this person is, or what this person is. But they had been working on Attack on Titan, and basically they were documenting the horrendous, unhealthy work conditions that MAPPA were putting them under. So I'm just going to read what it says here in this article.
Okay.
So it says, Mushio questioned their decision to work for the company, describing their experience of being asked to fix drawings over and over and over and over again until the sun came up as why they quit. They criticized MAPPA's decision to work on 4 shows at the same time instead of properly training its team so that such conditions would not be necessary. Mushio compared the work environment to a sweatshop where bottom-rung animators were tasked with correcting issues instead of actually drawing. According to Mushio, their complaint wasn't unique. Quote, as far as I can tell, about 80% of the employees feel similar to me.
Damn.
Yes. So that's doesn't
rough.
paint a good picture about what it's like to actually work for MAPPA. Especially if they're treated... I mean, that's, again, to me, one of the bigger problems in the anime industry, and it's something we should probably talk about on its own, is just how many animators are freelance animators and don't have permanent work placement. Like, they're bouncing around from studio to studio. Granted, some animators like that, and they like the freedom that comes with, and that's fine. But there's so many of them that don't want this. They actually want to stay with a studio for a while and, build a rapport there and, maybe become a producer or a director at some point. There's so many freelance animators and so few in-house animators anymore that I feel like it also fuels this problem of too many anime coming out.
Yeah, it's also like very interesting because while reading up on all of this, I didn't realize that there's also a lot of outsourcing that goes to animators from overseas who, again, like people are super passionate about this work, but they paid next to nothing because these studios allow themselves to pay them next to nothing because it's like, oh, they sort of exploit their love of the craft and the medium. And it's really shitty because like there's only so much you can like ask from these people till you burn them out. And
for sure. The sad thing is that so many animators are treated as if they're machines, that they're never going to burn out, that they're always going to be there, and that's just simply not the case. Like, again, this feels like it's something that we should talk about in its own like episode, because this is, I mean, as much as MAPPA is guilty of this, they're not alone in this. There are many other studios that do this. I mean, I would say a majority of anime studios are a lot like this these days, and it's mostly because of the amount of anime that's coming out. There's not enough time to make it for the animators that there are.
Yeah. And again, it's really shitty because they and even like a lot of studios, they create all of these wonderful shows that we love and adore. I mean, in 2020 also, MAPPA released Jujutsu Kaisen, which is an incredibly polished show. It's really amazing what they did in terms of the production of it, but it's kind of in spite of the really shitty work conditions and how much they overwork their staff. It's kind of a miracle it turned out so well. It's kind of depressing to, on the one hand, really enjoy all of these quality shows, but realize it's kind of on the back of really burnt out people.
It is.
You know?
It's sad, is what it is. And the thing is that I think a lot of this has to do with Japan's work culture. Like, Japan has this work culture that, you burn yourself out because you feel like you owe it to your company. And I mean, far be it from me, someone who's not Japanese, to criticize how Japanese people run their businesses, but that doesn't seem healthy.
Nope.
Especially considering you're demonstrating a trait of loyalty for a company that would think absolutely nothing of replacing you 5 minutes from now.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Just for me, it's an overall issue with the industry, but MAPPA does seem to be very guilty of it recently.
Yeah, it's rough.
But to kind of go on from that, where does MAPPA stand now? I mean, I feel like if we had done this 4 or 5 years ago, we'd have a very different opinion of MAPPA than we currently do. I feel like your opinion may be the same as mine. Feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. But I feel like that MAPPA does good work, but they could do better if they just treated people well and were more picky and choosy about the stuff that they picked up.
Totally, I agree with you. It's kind of, it's as a whole, I really wish the industry would change its course that it's been taking for so long and just maybe focus on less shows every season. Give these shows more the time they need to be great, and treat the workers better and pay them.
Yeah,
it's kind of crazy to say that, but I don't think it's a whole lot to ask. But that's the thing. I don't know how long this can keep going. I don't know for how long they can do all these really shitty practices until they just left with no animators.
There's got to be a bottom that's going to fall out eventually. I don't know where that bottom is. I don't know. I don't know when the rug is going to get pulled out. But I know if they keep going like this, if we keep having more and more anime coming out every season, with not more and more animators coming into the business, eventually it's all going to fall down.
Tumbling down, tumbling down, tumbling down.
God, no. God, no. PTSD!
For sure.
But looking forward to the future, by the time this airs, the summer season of 2021 will have started. They do have one anime, I guess technically two, anime coming out in the summer. That is Remain, which is a sports anime about water polo. They also have...
That's an original, right?
It is an original work, yes. They also have...
So Chainsaw Man soon.
Yeah, that too. They also have an anime called... I don't know what the Japanese title is, something like Idaten Deities in the Peaceful Generation. I don't know. Never heard of it. It's apparently based on a manga.
Also,
so they got that coming out. Chainsaw Man, though, is probably what a lot of people, myself included, are looking forward to a lot.
Same.
They also recently announced that they're doing a Jujutsu Kaisen movie.
Also looking forward to that.
Which is a prequel to Jujutsu Kaisen. They're also they've been working on the prequel movie to Yuri on Ice for what feels like forever.
Wait, it's a prequel?
Yes, it's called Ice Adolescence, which apparently is going to follow a young Victor around.
Interesting.
And they also very recently released Yasuke that was a Netflix original, which has very mixed reviews.
So yeah, they're just chugging along with a lot of productions.
Yes.
We'll see.
So I don't know what the future. I know one thing the future definitely holds is Chainsaw Man, and people, myself included, love that manga.
I'm really looking forward to watching it and experiencing that story. I hope it's gonna turn out well. But yeah, the next few years are gonna be interesting for MAPPA. And as we said, they just celebrated their 10th anniversary. I hope they do well, but I don't know. It feels like a ticking time bomb for them and the entire industry when it all implode on itself.
Yeah, and going forward, it'll be interesting to see what Maruyama's new Studio M2, eventually gets up to. They have worked on a couple of productions as of the time of this recording. They've worked on a collaboration with Studio. I don't know if you're supposed to say Voln or Voln. And they have also done an anime called Onihei, which is an adaptation of an old novel. But one thing they have done, or not done, but they're planning on doing, or they're in the development process for, is an adaptation of Pluto, which is a sort of spin-off story from Astro Boy, which will be very interesting to see how that goes.
Yeah, it's also I'm curious to see what Maruyama does next. The guy is really old, but still is very much like making cool shit. So that's good for him.
It's also worth mentioning that one thing that Maruyama does almost all the time is come to an anime convention in the United States called Otakon, which is one that I've gone to for the last few years. Obviously, he's not going to be there at this year's Otakon because they're not really having any international guests. At least they haven't announced any, and because of travel restrictions due to COVID in a lot of countries still, I'm pretty sure they're not going to have anyone from Japan, which is a shame. But it's a convention that he's attended 15 times since 2001. So I don't know why he likes it so much, but it's good to see.
Good for him.
I wish we had more people from the industry go to more anime conventions in the United States besides just like 2 or 3 of the big ones.
Yep.
But yeah, like you say, he's getting up there in age, so who knows how much longer he's actually going to be in the business. He's been in the business for 50 plus years now, so I mean, you can't ask for much more from him, I guess.
For sure.
But that's it. That's Studio MAPPA as of today. 10 years on, it's definitely a different studio from when it started. I can't say it's necessarily for the best.
We'll see. Hopefully, again, things will turn out okay. Maybe just maybe. I don't know what it will take, but maybe the MAPPA and the rest of the industry as well will kind of take a step back, reevaluate what they want to do with themselves and how they want to treat their workers, and just restructure the entire industry. Maybe that's too naive of me to think, but until that happens,
fair, I mean, with how vocal some freelance animators for them have been recently, maybe it's gonna be a way for them, getting called out publicly. Maybe it'll make them change.
Maybe, but again, a lot of these shows are really profitable. I mean, again, Jujutsu Kaisen was huge.
Attack on Titan
is huge.
Chainsaw Man is probably going to be huge.
Yep. And when the Jujutsu Kaisen movie will come out, it'll probably make a lot of money.
Yeah, Christmas Eve 2021.
There you go. So they don't have an incentive to change their ways, which is kind of unfortunate.
I will say, and maybe this is indicative. Well, this may be more indicative of the pandemic that we've just been through and are still really kind of in. But so far, there's the only things that they have on the table for 2021 are Zombieland Saga's second season, Remain, and that other one that I talked about, who has a really long name.
And Chainsaw Man, wasn't that supposed to be in 2021?
It doesn't have a release date yet. Everything is TBA with that. It doesn't have a director, a release date, an episode count, nothing. So for all we know, it could be 2022.
Gotcha.
Again, that's as of the time of this recording. That could change tomorrow for all we know. But like I said, the only thing it really has on its plate going forward after the summer is Attack on Titan's final season, part 2.
Yep. We'll
see.
Maybe
this is indicative of them maybe cutting back a little bit and giving their animators time to work.
I won't count.
I think it's more indicative of being in a pandemic for the last year and a half. But
yeah, I agree with that.
Time will tell. Time will tell. I think it's safe to say that you and I, at least so far, have been fans of their work, and I hope we get to see more good anime going forward.
Yeah, again, like you and I, we both love a lot of their shows. It's just really disappointing and unfortunate that these shows that we love so much were made under those conditions. It's just
for sure.
But again, not necessarily unique to MAPPA, It's a lot of this industry works like that. It's just unfortunate. Really unfortunate.
It does. But with that, thank you for dropping in to listen to us gush about Studio MAPPA. Check the description below to find links to Anime Club After Dark on Twitch, on social media, and on Discord. Check out our merch store and our affiliate links as well. Any purchases you do make there really help us out. With that, I have been your host, Alex, and I will see you next time. Say goodnight, Natai.
Good night, everybody. I'm gonna go drop dead in bed. It's 3 a.m. I can't. I can't.